what I want to do here, because I did mention the draft is coming. Now, we all know the draft, in the end, it's not going to mean much. All you're doing is just you're taking the same pieces and moving them around. So what the overall impact of this is even going to be, I was going to do like a whole draft special, and then I said, what's the fucking point? Really? Because I'm putting more thought and effort into this than WWE does half the time. But I did want to just come up with a few moves here and run them by you here. So the draft starts on Friday on Smackdown. It will then extend into a second night on Raw next Monday. I might actually go live on YouTube after that. And what we'll do on Friday this week is we will turn the Friday night stream into another double stream like we did a few weeks ago after the Madison Square Garden show. And so I'll recap night one of the draft, and then we'll go into AEW Rampage. These are the draft moves that I think are realistic. I mean, I could see these moves happening, and these are some of the moves that I would make. Because I don't really want to blow up SmackDown. SmackDown, compared to Raw lately, for the most part, has been the A show. I don't want SmackDown to get blown up and screwed here. I don't think they will. I don't think Fox would be very happy if they did that. So I don't think SmackDown is losing anyone of any great value in their eyes. Like the biggest stars, I don't see Roman Reigns or even Brock Lesnar. I don't think guys like that are going to be moving. But maybe the biggest name that I do see moving, and I think it would be the right move for him, is Drew McIntyre. I think Drew McIntyre, he's taken a lot of losses recently. And that's okay. If the plan is to move him to a different brand and give him a new start, then it doesn't matter. Let him put over some people on his way out. And that's what I think is happening here. I think Drew McIntyre goes from Raw to SmackDown. That is a move that I would make. Jeff Hardy is an interesting name because Jeff Hardy seems like he has passed his peak. It doesn't seem like there is any kind of real big push in the cards for Jeff Hardy at this point. The way that he's been handled by WWE demonstrates to me that they don't really see him in that role anymore. He has been added to the U.S. title match tonight at Extreme Rules. I would be surprised to see him walk out with the championship. Not impossible, but I'm not expecting him to walk away with the win. In fact, I think he was probably added to take the loss. But I think Jeff Hardy goes from Raw to SmackDown is a move that I would make. And the main reason I would move him from Raw to SmackDown, besides the fact that he is just, a fish swimming upstream with nowhere to go on Monday nights, I still think that Jeff Hardy has one last big program in him. I didn't say run. I didn't say I would give him the championship. But I think that between now and WrestleMania, like we know Roman is going to finish things out with the Demon. We know that he's going to face Brock Lesnar next month. Survivor Series will be him against whoever the champion is on Raw, probably Big E. What happens then from that December to April period leading up to WrestleMania? And we still don't even know what the WrestleMania match is going to be. Is it going to be The Rock? Probably not. Is it going to be a rematch with Brock Lesnar? That seems marginally more likely than The Rock does at this point. But Roman is going to need more people to beat. He is going to need more people to work with between Survivor Series and WrestleMania. So who could that be? Who could be that babyface that the crowd loves so much and so badly wants to see win and get one last run with the championship? His name is Jeff Hardy. I think you move Jeff over to SmackDown, he starts winning matches for a change, and you build him up just enough where in December, or at the Royal Rumble in January, maybe even into February, you can get 2 or 3 matches out of it. He has a program, possibly his last big program of his career, singles program, with Roman Reigns. And he does not win the Universal Championship, but he could face Roman, he could contend for it, and I think the people like Jeff Hardy enough, and they want to see him do well. People were appalled when they saw him come out a few weeks ago in the Brigade of Jobbers for the 24/7 belt. People still like Jeff Hardy. He's not the same, he's older, he's more, broken down. Injuries, I think, have taken their toll. But, he could still go, and he still has a very loyal fan base. He's one of those rare baby faces who he connects with the audience in a different way. And he's been around for so long, and I think people would love to see him get one last shot at the championship. He would be a great person for Roman Reigns to beat. Feed him to Roman Reigns. Build him up first, but feed him to Roman Reigns. So I would move Jeff from Raw to SmackDown. Kevin Owens is another name, and we've talked about Owens and what his future may or may not hold. His contract is going to be up at the end of January, January 31st. He will be a free agent if he does not re-sign before then with WWE. He could very well be AEW bound. He has a lot of friends in AEW, and I'm going to mention the Owen Hart stuff here in a little bit when I talk about all the AEW news. He's a huge Owen Hart fan. You hear it in his name. Named his son after him. I would think that maybe the appeal of possibly being able even to participate in something like that might draw him in, away from WWE to AEW. So we don't know for sure what his future is going to hold, other than he's at least going to be around a few more months. But every year, Kevin Owens seems to be in this rut where he is in need of a fresh start. And he was quoted in that Bleacher Report interview last year that I read on the podcast last week, where he said, every year I switch brands. I think it's been a few years in a row. He always switches brands. It always feels like, man, I need to switch brands and go from Raw to SmackDown to get a fresh start. He goes from Raw to SmackDown. Maybe he gets a little bit of a push, and then he falls in the cracks and feels like, well, I need another fresh start. He goes from SmackDown to Raw. Rinse, repeat. This has played itself out multiple times over the years. And now he's kind of back in that same spot again. But as I look at the Raw roster, I think to myself, if Big E is going to be the WWE champion for a while, they're going to need some solid heels for him to step into the ring with. Kevin Owens has been doing the babyface thing for a long time now. Kevin Owens is a better heel, in my opinion, than a babyface. We've seen vicious heel Kevin Owens. It's been a while since we've seen him. I know people like him, but I think the timing is right, not only for him to switch brands, but for him to go heel. And you can get some Big E Kevin Owens matches for the championship. Kevin Owens from SmackDown to Raw is a move that I would make. Ricochet, another name. I don't know what he's been up to. Probably hanging out on Main Event. A waste of talent. If anybody could benefit from a change of scenery, I think it's someone like Ricochet. I would send him from Raw to SmackDown like Kevin Owens. I think he needs a fresh start. Now, let me float this, and this is not something I think people are going to be very enamored with. I'm not happy with this idea either, but I put this out there because I think it's possible, because it is WWE that we're talking about here. I talked about what we saw on Friday on SmackDown with the Street Profits. Angelo Dawkins wasn't there, wherever he was. Montez Ford had a match with Roman Reigns. He had a very impressive showing. I have said that of the two members of the Street Profits, Angelo Dawkins is very good, but he is not Montez Ford. When I look at the two of them, who do I think has the bigger upside as a single? By far, it is Montez Ford. He is going to be a single star at some point in the, we'll say in the future. I don't want to say the not too distant future. We'll say in the future. But maybe that future is coming a lot quicker than we all think. I mean, hell, maybe that match we saw on Friday was something of a test to see how he does. If it was, I think he passed with flying colors. And what worries me about that is now we have a draft coming up. WWE has broken up tag teams before in the draft. I mean, they've broken up tag teams even without a draft. I'm not saying that I would even entertain the idea of doing this right now, but it's not as if WWE has not split up tag teams in the past. It is their favorite fetish, breaking up tag teams for no good reason. They even broke up the Dudleys, I think, in one of these drafts many years ago, and then they realized what a stupid mistake that was, and they ended up putting them right back together. But you don't have to go back 20 years. You could just look in the last 6, 12, 18 months at teams that they have broken up for no reason. Just keep that in mind here. We could very well see the Street Profits split up in this draft, and if that happens, Montez Ford stays wherever Bianca Belair is. He'll be on that brand. He'll stay on SmackDown. Angelo Dawkins goes to Raw. If that happens, that is it. That's curtains for Angelo Dawkins. If you're Angelo Dawkins right now, you do not want to hear this. You do not want to hear anybody talking about this idea, even as a possibility. Because he is the one who's going to draw the short straw in that arrangement if and when the Street Profits get split up. Which they will at some point. But if it happens this week, that is the beginning of the end for him. He will end up much the way Tucker did when they split up Otis and Tucker. Cesaro. He had his push earlier this year, his first pay-per-view main event, challenging for a world championship, or I guess in this case, a universal championship. I guess the universe is technically bigger than the world. And we haven't really seen much of him since the Seth Rollins feud was over. We haven't seen much of him on television. I think, and again, it almost feels like a lateral move here. I don't see him going to Raw and getting a much bigger push, but I think he would benefit from going from SmackDown to Raw. I would move Cesaro over to Mondays. Apollo Crews and Commander Azeez. Apollo Crews had the Intercontinental Championship for a while. I like the way he reinvented himself. He's very good. But especially after that loss to Nakamura on TV this week, where he did not regain his Intercontinental title, I question what his future looks like on SmackDown. I don't think it looks very bright. I think Crews and Azeez can be moved over from SmackDown to Raw. And then I look at NXT. NXT, I don't believe, is technically part of this draft. So for example, you're not going to have Raw or SmackDown people being drafted to NXT. I do think that we will see some NXT talent moving to the main roster as part of this draft as early as this Friday. And the three names that stand out to me and the three names that I think are ready to make that move, of course, I always worry about their future, but the one I'm least concerned about is LA Knight. LA Knight, I mean, he's not a spring chicken anymore. If they're going to move him, the time to move him is now. The time to move him is not a year from now, 2 years from now. The time is now. And I look at what they did to him on NXT recently when he lost to Braun Breaker, and then later that night he lost again. And I'm thinking, what the fuck are they doing with this guy? And like McIntyre on Raw, it felt to me like maybe they're just using him to get this new guy over, and it doesn't matter because he's going to be leaving NXT soon. I hope he is. I think LA Knight has all the tools that he needs to be a success on Raw or SmackDown. I can't imagine Vince McMahon doesn't look at this guy and listen to him on promos and not smile and think, boy, I could sure use a guy like this. So I think LA Knight is on the move, and I think LA Knight goes from NXT to Monday Night Raw. I think Raw could really use him. Austin Theory has dropped little hints that he might be finishing up with NXT. He's had a bunch of dark matches recently. See, LA Knight has not had dark matches. But Austin Theory has had a whole bunch of them. And they would only do that if they were interested in seeing more of him before he makes the move. I think Austin Theory makes the move from NXT to SmackDown. And then on the women's side, Dakota Kai. Last few weeks has kind of dropped off the face of the earth after she lost to Raquel Gonzalez, who has now moved on. Raquel is going to be defending against Frankie Monet on TV this week. Dakota Kai has had some dark matches as well as a babyface. I think that she's going to be moving from NXT. I think Dakota Kai, the place for her to go is Raw. And the reason I think it's Raw, which could use her, but I think it's because SmackDown has gotten a whole bunch of women from NXT the last few times. They got Tegan Nox, they got Shotzi Blackheart, and most recently they got Toni Storm. So unless any or all of them are moving in the draft, they're all on SmackDown. You got to give someone to Raw. I think that person is Dakota Kai. Keith Lee had yet another dark match as they try to figure out what to do with this man. I don't know why it is so difficult to figure out how to use somebody like Keith Lee. But apparently it is. And now they're trying out a new nickname for him. He was announced to the ring as Keith Bearcat Lee. They should just cut out the cat and call him Bear Lee, as in we barely get to see him on television. Now, I don't know if they gave him the name or if they told him, hey, go come up with some name yourself. We want to give you a nickname. And this is his way of paying tribute to Bearcat Wright. The same Bearcat Wright I just talked about last month in one of the This Week in History segments on the podcast. Remember, I talked about how Ron Simmons, a lot of times people think of Ron Simmons as the first black world champion in pro wrestling, which is not true. It was Bearcat Wright. He beat Fred Blassie to win the WWA World Championship. WWA was not a major promotion. It was basically an outlaw promotion after they broke away from the NWA, but this was back in the 60s. So Bearcat Wright is a a fairly big name in wrestling history. He has his place in history. He's the first black champion. So if it's a tribute to him, I mean, that's nice and all. And I know in NXT, when he would give someone the big double chop to the chest, they would refer to it as his big bear paws. But this is just one of those changes that just feels like it's change for the sake of change. Why is this man toiling away in dark matches still? At first I thought it was maybe the residual effects from COVID and he, which almost killed him. And even he talked about in that video that he posted when he revealed that it was COVID that kept him out for all these months and how scary things got. He even said, he's not really back in full ring shape yet. He's still working on it. And so maybe that has something to do with it. It's been a few months now. Maybe they're still letting him get back in ring shape. I don't know. It feels to me like they just don't know what the fuck to do with this guy. There is nothing wrong, and there is nothing wrong with his name. But we have a draft coming up. And that would be a great time to draft him to one show or the other and get him back on TV. He is technically still part of the Raw brand. That is where he should be. Hopefully we will see Keith Lee reappear on television by next Monday and get him going again. And then one other name I'll throw out there, and I really don't give a shit where he ends up, is Elias. What happened to Elias? They were running vignettes on Raw. Remember him in the graveyard with the tombstone? Elias, rest in peace, 2017 to 2021. The new Elias is coming. We haven't seen a vignette in over a month. Maybe he really is dead. So maybe he'll reappear suddenly, and he'll be drafted to one show over the other, but I'd be lying if I said I really cared as far as which brand he ends up on. He's kind of in that Jackson Riker category where I don't really care where he ends up. I'm just puzzled by the fact that we had all these videos. It's like the Toni Storm thing all over again. Toni Storm debuts on television. We don't see her for 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Is she alive? Did she have a visa issue? Did she get lost? Should we be putting posters up around the neighborhood? I don't know. Thankfully, she's back. But maybe we'll see Elias reappear on TV this week.